Okay, let's unpack this. Are you drowning in repetitive tasks, copying data from here to there,
Yeah.
sending the same emails over and over, updating spreadsheets by hand?
Yeah, it's a drag. Imagine if a lot of that just happened automatically.
Exactly. That's the promise, right?
Right.
The core idea behind workflow automation tools. And today, we are diving deep into three of the really big players in this space: N8N, Make, and Zapier.
We've gathered insights from, well, a whole stack of articles, reviews, community chats, people really talking about these platforms.
We're not just going to list features, though.
No, definitely not. We're trying to pull out what really matters, the key differences, what it means for your strategy, and frankly, who each tool is actually best for.
Yeah, our mission here is to give you a kind of shortcut so you can get up to speed on this automation landscape without getting totally lost in all the details.
Right. By the end of this, you should have a much clearer picture of which tool, or maybe even which combination of tools might be the right fit for what you need to do.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What exactly are these workflow automation tools doing? What did the sources say?
Fundamentally, they're like digital glue. They connect all those different online services you use, your CRM, email, project tools, spreadsheets, marketing platforms, you name it.
And they automate how information and actions flow between them.
Precisely. Instead of you manually moving data, say, from a form submission into your CRM and then into a spreadsheet.
Which takes forever, and you always make typos.
Exactly. These tools build automated pathways for that data. It cuts down the manual work massively, reduces errors, speeds everything up, and frees you up to do, well, more important things.
Makes sense. And while some apps have their own automations built in, like email marketing tools.
Sure, like setting up a welcome sequence.
Right, but you need these dedicated platforms when you want to connect different apps together, right?
Yeah.
When the workflow crosses boundaries.
That's the key difference. Cross-app automation.
And that brings us to our three main contenders. The sources seem to give them pretty distinct personalities. Zapier often seen as like the original, the most user-friendly, the go-to for no-code.
Yeah, that's the common view. Then there's Make, which used to be Integromat, some might remember. It's usually described as this powerful, very visual alternative. More complex maybe than Zapier, but still quite accessible.
Okay. And N8N.
N8N consistently comes up as the more, let's say, technical option. Super flexible, often open source, really appealing to developers or anyone needing maximum control.
Got it. So let's talk about actually using them. What's it like to build an automation? The UI, the experience, they sound quite different.
Oh, very different approaches philosophically almost. Zapier's known for being really straightforward.
Linear, right, step by step.
Exactly. You set a trigger when this happens in app A, and then you add actions, and then do this in app B, then do that in app C. It's built for simplicity. Most people can get their first zap, as they call it, running in like a few hours.
Okay, that sounds easy to start with. What about Make?
Make is very visual. It uses this drag and drop canvas. You build your workflow, they call them scenarios, like a diagram, connecting these little modules.
So you can actually see the whole process laid out.
Yeah, which is great for complex stuff, like workflows that branch off in different directions. The visual part is intuitive, but figuring out exactly how to link the modules, how to handle the data passing between them, it takes a bit longer than Zapier, maybe, a few days to feel really comfortable.
Right. And N8N, you said it's node-based?
Yeah, it takes that visual connection idea even further. It looks a lot like tools developers might use, flow-based programming kind of thing.
Yeah.
Each step, each integration is a node, and you wire them together.
Sounds powerful.
It is incredibly powerful, allows for really sophisticated logic, complex structures, but the learning curve is definitely steeper. The sources were suggesting like weeks of using it regularly to really feel like you've mastered everything it can do.
So Zapier is like filling out a form, Make is like drawing a detailed map, and N8N is more like building an engine.
That's a pretty good analogy, actually. Yeah.
And just digging a bit deeper on building these workflows, Make has its scenarios, Zapier has zaps. What about N8N's nodes? What does that unlock?
Well, for more technical folks, N8N's structure allows some really advanced things. You can have workflows with multiple starting points, multiple triggers, and they have specific nodes just for complex tasks like looping through lists of data, merging data from different places, even comparing whole data sets, or setting up really granular error handling right inside the flow.
Okay, so summarizing the learning curve, maybe hours for Zapier, days for Make, potentially weeks to master N8N.
Roughly, yeah. But it's important to add that sources do agree that even N8N, despite its depth, is still accessible for basic stuff. You don't have to be a coder to connect app A to app B.
The complexity kicks in when you want to do more advanced things.
Exactly. Simple in, simple out is doable on all three. The real difference is how easy it is to then layer on complex logic or custom code or intricate error checks.
Okay, this next part sounds really interesting based on the sources, the pricing. Apparently the models are totally different.
Oh, absolutely. This is maybe the biggest differentiator and has huge cost implications, especially when you scale up your automations. You really need to understand this part.
So Zapier first, how do they charge?
Zapier charges per task. And a task, in their world, is one piece of data being processed by one action step in your Zap.
Okay, let's use an example. Say I have a workflow. New contact comes from a web form. Step 1, add to CRM. Step 2, add to a spreadsheet if 100 contacts come through.
Right, that's 100 contacts times 2 action steps, so 200 tasks consumed.
Wow, okay. So even a simple workflow, if it handles a lot of items, can chew through tasks quickly.
Very quickly. And their free plan is quite limited sources mention 100 tasks a month, only 5 active Zaps. Paid plans scale with task usage, so maybe around $20 a month for 750 tasks, or $69 for 2,000 tasks, roughly. High data volume equals high cost, basically.
Got it. How does Make you compare? Their model is different.
Yeah, Make charges per operation. An operation is basically counted each time a module in your visual scenario does something.
An action, essentially.
Pretty much. The very first module, the trigger, also counts as one operation each time it runs, even if it checks and finds no new data to process. Some things like routers or error handling modules usually don't count, which is a detail.
Okay. And their free tier.
More generous, typically 1,000 operations per month. Paid plans scale up from there, maybe $9 a month for 10,000 operations, or one source mentioned around $29 a month for 40,000 operations. Often this makes Make look more affordable than Zapier, especially for workflows that have a fair bit of logic but maybe don't process thousands of items every single run.
That does sound potentially better value in many cases.
It can be, but there's a potential catch. Something highlighted in the source is sort of a hidden cost aspect for some users.
Oh, what's that?
It's about how often your workflows need to check for new data. Pulling triggers. Make counts these checks as operations even if no new data is found.
So if you need an automation to check for updates every minute.
Those checks can really add up and consume your operations allowance faster than you might think, especially compared to workflows that only trigger when something specific happens, like a webhook. It's something to be aware of.
That's a crucial detail. Okay, so what about N8N's pricing model? You said it stands out.
It really does, especially if you deal with lots of data or complex multi-step processes. On their paid cloud version, N8N charges per complete workflow execution.
Per execution, meaning one whole run of the workflow.
Exactly. One run from start to finish counts as one execution. It doesn't matter if that run involves 5 steps or 50 steps, or if it processes 10 records or 10,000 records within that single run.
Wait, so my example earlier, 1,000 contacts processed by a 2-step workflow. In the N8N, that's just one execution.
Correct. Just one. And you can see why the sources flag this as a massive economic advantage for certain use cases. If you're processing data in batches or handling large volumes triggered at once, N8N's model can be, potentially orders of magnitude cheaper than Zapier's per task, or even Make's per operation model for those high-volume scenarios.
That is a huge difference. What about their free offering?
Well, N8N is open source. You can download it and run it on your own server, self-host it completely free. Unlimited workflows, unlimited executions.
For free? Seriously?
Seriously. Now, the free community self-hosted version might lack some of the enterprise features like advanced user management or collaboration tools you get in the paid cloud version, but the core automation engine, unlimited at no cost.
Wow.
And their paid cloud plans reflect that per execution model. Starter tiers were around $22 a month for something like 2,500 executions, scaling up. And importantly, they don't really gate core features by tier. You pay for the volume of executions, not for the ability to build complex workflows.
So N8N offers a potentially zero-cost path if you can self-host. And even its paid cloud option could be way cheaper for high-volume tasks.
Precisely. Calculating your costs based on your specific expected usage number of runs, data volume per run, is absolutely critical when choosing between these three. It's not apples to apples at all.
Okay, let's switch gears. How well do they connect to other apps? Integrations. Who has the most?
That's traditionally been Zapier's territory. They've been around the longest and boast the biggest library. Sources say well over 6,000 different apps.
So if you need to connect to something slightly obscure or niche...
Zapier is probably your best bet for finding a pre-built connector ready to go.
But, like we said, quantity isn't everything.
Yeah.
What about the quality or depth of those integrations?
That's where the picture gets more nuanced. The sources suggest that Make, while having fewer integrations, maybe in the 1,500 to 1,800 range, often provides more depth in its connections.
Meaning you can do more within the connected app.
Potentially, yeah. Like, a Google Sheets module in Make might let you perform more complex actions or access more specific data fields compared to the equivalent action in Zapier, according to some reviews.
Interesting. And N's numbers.
Around 1,000 native integrations, plus a growing number of community-built nodes, so fewer out of the box than the others.
But you said earlier its strength is technical flexibility. Does that make up for fewer connectors?
To a large extent, yes. N8N is arguably the most flexible for custom stuff. It has really strong support for writing your own code, JavaScript, and Python, especially if you self-host, because then you can bring in external libraries.
Oh, okay.
There's a function node for custom logic. You can even build completely new nodes if you need to. But the killer feature for flexibility is its HTTP request node.
What does that do?
It lets you interact with basically any web service or API directly. You have fine-grained control over the requests. So if a service has an API, even if N8N doesn't have a dedicated node for it, you can almost certainly connect to it using the HTTP node. This opens up, well, pretty much everything.
Got it. So you're less reliant on waiting for them to build a specific connector. How does Make handle custom API calls or logic?
Make has specific modules for HTTP requests and working with JSON data, and its visual builder lets you do quite complex data manipulation and set up conditional logic visually. It's powerful in its own way.
But maybe less flexible than N8N's code approach.
Potentially. Some sources mention Make has several different HTTP modules for slightly different tasks, getting data, sending data, etc., which might be a bit confusing compared to N8N's single, very versatile HTTP node. And embedding actual custom JavaScript code within a workflow step is apparently an enterprise-only feature in Make.
And Zapier's custom code, more limited still.
Yeah, they have the code by Zapier step for little bits of JavaScript or Python, but the sources highlight significant limitations, restrictions on memory, processing time, and crucially, you can't install external code libraries or packages. So for complex custom logic or integrating with APIs that need specific libraries, it's much more constrained than Make, and especially N8N.
Okay. And you mentioned self-hosting again. Just to be clear, only N8N offers that.
Correct. That's a unique selling point for N8N. Because it's open source with a fair code license, you can install and run it on your own infrastructure.
Which gives you total control over data security compliance.
Exactly. Essential for companies with strict rules around data location, like GDPR, or in highly regulated sectors like finance or healthcare. Make and Zapier. Purely cloud services. No self-hosting option.
That's a deal breaker for some, no question. What about managing data inside these platforms, like temporary storage?
Make has a feature called data stores. They act like simple databases built right into Make. You can define the structure, store data, retrieve it later in your workflows. Pretty handy.
Does Zapier have that now too?
Yes, they introduced Zapier tables fairly recently. Serves a similar purpose, a user-friendly way to hold and manage structured data within Zapier itself. N8N tends to focus more on processing data as it flows through the workflow. It does store some data about the execution itself, but for persistent data storage, the usual approach is to integrate with an external database, which it does very well.
Okay, moving on to some more advanced stuff. Error handling. What happens when an automation breaks midway?
This is important for reliability. Make seems quite robust here. You can configure different error handling directives for each module, like ignore the error and continue, try to resume, save the work done so far, commit, undo the work, roll back, or just stop everything. Break.
So lots of control.
Yeah, and it saves incomplete runs so you can go back and figure out what went wrong. Zapier's approach is a bit more basic. You can use filters and paths to handle different outcomes, and you can replay failed runs manually or automatically, but you don't get that same level of granular control over the workflow state during an error like commit or rollback. N8N allows for very customizable error handling. You can actually build dedicated error workflows that get triggered when something goes wrong in your main workflow, or you can handle errors specifically at certain nodes within the main flow. Very flexible for complex scenarios.
What about using these tools as a team? Collaboration features.
Make offers pretty advanced user management, roles, permissions, especially on their higher tiers like teams and organization. Zapier allows multiple users and basic sharing of zaps and credentials, but typically only on their paid team plans or higher.
N8N.
N8N is interesting here. It includes unlimited users on all its cloud plans. Basic management tools come in around the Pro tier, with more advanced team and workflow governance features on Enterprise. But sharing workflows and credentials is possible even from the starter tier.
Okay, and we absolutely have to touch on AI. It's everywhere now.
Yeah.
How are these platforms integrating it?
Yeah, it's a huge focus. All three integrate with the big AI services like OpenAI, so you can easily add AI tasks like summarizing text or generating content into your automations.
How are they differentiating themselves?
Zapier seems focused on weaving AI into the user experience itself. They have AI helping you build zaps, AI within their data formatting tools, even AI assisting with the code step. It's about making AI accessible while you build.
Makes sense for their user base. Make
also has an AI assistant to help build scenarios and, of course, modules to connect to various AI services. Pretty standard integration approach.
And NA, you hinted it might be more advanced here too.
Definitely. This is another area where NA really caters to the technical crowd, according to the sources. It's highlighted for having the most powerful AI capabilities, mainly through its huge set of nodes, almost 70 of them, specifically for LangChain.
LangChain, what's that?
It's a popular framework for building applications using large language models. Having these dedicated LangChain nodes means N8N users can build really sophisticated AI-powered apps directly within their workflows.
Like what kind of apps?
Things like custom chatbots, autonomous AI agents, complex RA, retrieval augmented generation systems, integrating custom AI tools. Really advanced stuff. It also supports connecting to custom AI model endpoints and using LangChain's JavaScript library in its code node. If you're doing serious, complex AI development within your automations, N8N seems to be the most powerful platform right now.
Wow, okay, so let's try to synthesize all this. Based on the sources, who is each platform really best for? Let's start with Zapier.
The consensus seems clear. Zapier is ideal for beginners, non-technical users, or anyone needing to quickly connect a massive variety of standard web apps without complex logic. If ease of use and breadth of connection are top priorities, Zapier shines. It might even be worth the potential higher cost for large companies that specifically need its add-on features like tables or interfaces.
Okay, and
Make is positioned for that middle ground. No-code or low-code users, marketers, operations folks, agencies who need more power and visual control than Zapier offers, but aren't necessarily developers. People who need complex data transformations visualized nicely. It often hits a sweet spot for balancing capability and usability, and can be more cost-effective than Zapier for many medium complexity workflows.
Right, assuming you watch out for those operation counts with polling triggers.
Exactly. And finally, N8N.
The technical powerhouse.
Pretty much. It's geared towards developers, engineers, technical teams, anyone needing maximum control, deep customization, the ability to self-host for security or compliance reasons. It excels with complex logic, high data volumes thanks to that per-execution pricing custom API integrations, and those advanced AI applications using things like LangChain. It's often the most cost-effective option at scale, especially self-hosted or for high-volume cloud tasks.
So it really reinforces that there's no single best tool here. It completely hinges on your specific situation, your tech skills, budget, data volume, control needs.
Absolutely. And worth remembering, there are other tools out there too. One source briefly mentioned Integrately, praising its clear pricing and support. The landscape is broad.
Good point. What if you start on one and want to switch? Is migrating easy?
Generally no. The sources suggest migrating usually means manually rebuilding all your workflows on the new platform, not a quick copy-paste job.
Ouch. So definitely wise to use those free tiers or trials to test things out with your real use cases before committing fully.
Highly recommended. And, some people use more than one platform. A hybrid approach using Zapier for quick connections, maybe Make for visual marketing flows, and AN for heavy backend tasks. That's also a totally valid strategy.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, we've seen the core trade-offs, right? Zapier.easy, huge reach, but costly at scale and technically limited. Make visual power, good balance, but watch the pricing details, no self-hosting. Ultimate flexibility, control, cost-efficient for volume complex AI, self-hostable but steeper learning curve, fewer pre-built apps.
Choosing really comes down to knowing yourself, your needs, your team, your budget, your data.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Looking at how fast these tools are evolving, especially with AI getting bolted on everywhere, and this push towards both more power and more ease of use. What do you think happens next? Do these platforms try to become do-everything solutions, merging all these strengths?
Or do we see even more specialization, where you'll increasingly need to pick and choose, maybe combining several different tools strategically to cover all your automation bases?
Which path seems more likely to you? And what does that mean for how you should be thinking about automation going forward?
What stands out to you?
We genuinely love to hear your thoughts on these platforms. What have your experiences been? Any questions we didn't cover? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, if you found this deep dive useful, please give us a like. It really helps.
And definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive.